If you like my content, you can go to my YouTube page and click the join button. And for as little as 99 cents a month, you can become a member. If you're a member, you get access to beautiful little emojis on live stream. And you will also get a little jester hat next to your name. You can also support me on Patreon for only $5 a month, uh, which would be very helpful. It's helping me upgrade my equipment and such. The video is called Is Fascism Right or Left? And I can see who's on the page right now. Okay, great. Great. Okay, let's continue. Let's see what they have to say about if fascism right or left.
He's a fascist. For decades, this has been a favorite smear of the left aimed at those on the right. Every Republican president, for that matter, virtually every Republican, since the 1970s has been called a fascist, now more than ever. This label is based on the idea that fascism is a phenomenon of the political.
I cannot for my life remember that guy's name, but I will say he is a right winger, not too bright. Okay, a lot of the stuff he says is completely wrong. The Republican Party likes to use him as a public face because he's not white. I can't remember his name, but regardless, I know zero expertise on the issue of fascism being left or right. Zero expertise on history, zero expertise on politics at all. I mean, he maybe knows a little bit about politics because that's what he talks about, but not exactly an intelligent figure. Let's see here. Okay.
Political right. The left says it is, and some self-styled white supremacists and neo-Nazis
Dinesh D'Souza, that's his name.
embrace the label. But are they correct? To answer this question, we have to ask what
So
fascism...
before he starts, he's saying that fascism is far right. It absolutely is. Okay, it is almost universally considered far right by historians, political scientists, sociologists, etc. Um, the farther right, so there are multiple interpretations of the political spectrum. This is the most simplistic one for the sake of explanation here is left to right, just a straight line. The far right, the farther right you go is more authoritarian, more less equality, more hierarchy. Okay. So if you get to the far end of that, you get to a point where some people are considered so low on the hierarchy that they aren't even allowed to live. They're viewed as subhuman. And you have an authoritarian government based off nationalism. I forgot that too. The farther right you go, the more nationalistic you get. So fascism, definitely very nationalistic, very about hierarchy, and very much authoritarian. Okay. And yes, we could debate how, Stalin left and stuff. But again, on a simple left to right, and that's why the simple left to right accent is, political spectrum isn't perfect because it kind of doesn't take account some of those things.
really means. What is its underlying ideology? Where does it even come from? These are not easy questions to answer. We know the name of the philosopher of capitalism, Adam Smith. We know the name of the philosopher of Marxism, Karl Marx. But who's the philosopher of fascism? Yes, exactly. You don't know. Don't feel bad. Almost no one knows. This is not because he doesn't exist, but because his...
There are multiple different fascist thinkers in Europe and also in the United States. So there isn't really one thinker of fascism. That's the nature of fascism because it's a nationalist ideology. Different nations have different sort of fascist thinkers. I'll see what he says, though.
historians, most of whom are on the political left, had to erase him from history in order to avoid confronting
Nope.
fascism's actual beliefs.
Nope, nope, nope.
So let me introduce him to you.
Not true.
His
Lie.
name is Giovanni Gentile. Born in 1875,
Was one of them.
he was one of the world's most influential philosophers in the first half of the 20th century.
Also, let me point something out here to Dinesh D'Souza. If he knows anything about fascists, most of them really aren't the intellectual type. They're not sitting down and reading Giovanni Gentile. Okay, they're not reading a lot of these philosophers. A lot of the fascist philosophers were kind of like post hoc rationalizations for fascism. Fascists themselves don't really like reading. Okay, literally, they don't like intellectualism. So fascism kind of grows. I'll continue here in a second.
Gentile believed that there were two diametrically opposed types of democracy. One is liberal democracy, such as that of the United States, which Gentile dismisses as individualistic, too centered on liberty and personal rights, and therefore selfish.
Yeah, he
The
did
other,
say that.
the one Gentile recommends, is true democracy, in which individuals willingly subordinate themselves to the state. Like his
He did say
philosophical
that.
mentor Karl Marx, Gentile wanted to create a community.
Okay, Any Europeans in chat will know that Marx is very influential with almost every modern European thinker, almost every single one. So to say that Marx was the mentor of Gentile is technically true, but it's not. Every thinker has been modern thinker has been influenced by Marx. It wasn't like he was especially influenced by Marx.
Community
Um,
that resembles the family, a community where we are all in this together. It's easy to see the attraction of this idea. Indeed, it remains a common rhetorical theme of the left. For example, at the 1984 convention of the Democratic Party, the governor of New York
That's not true. So fascists, their idea of family and community is to get rid of to have classes, but make it so that those classes aren't fighting anymore. They unite them around the idea of a nation. Okay. So like, no, 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 there's no class conflict between the poor and the rich, the owning class and the working class. We are all one nation. So we can ignore that difference. That is not the same as liberalism. Now, it's a bit more complicated than that. I'm kind of nitpicking here, but we'll go.
Mario Cuomo, likened America to an extended family, where, through the government, people all take care of each other. Nothing's changed 30
Yeah, not the same as fascism. They don't think everyone should be included in that family, by the way, to the point where some people don't even deserve to live.
years later. A slogan of the 2012 Democratic Party convention was, "The government is the only thing we all belong to." They might as well have been quoting Gentile.
That's bullshit.
Now remember, Gentile was a man of the left. He was a committed socialist. For Gentile,
Again, any European in chat knows that there have been a lot. Europe has long had a lot of socialists, people who, or at least take inspiration from socialist ideas. That doesn't make them like doesn't make them like an actual socialist, if that makes sense. Okay, even some of the early Nazi Party people could be described partially as socialist, but they were still fascist. They had just been influenced by socialist ideas because it was a very popular idea in Europe.
fascism is a form of socialism, indeed, its
Nope,
most
nope,
workable
nope, nope, nope,
form.
nope, nope,
While
nope.
the socialism of Marx
Fascists are capitalist. Okay, there are some who have promoted anti-capitalist ideas, but they are capitalist by all accounts. They have a fake sort of socialism.
mobilizes people on the basis of class, fascism mobilizes people by appealing to their national identity as well as their class.
No, he actually appealed to national identity to overcome class.
Fascists are socialists with a national identity. German fascists in the
Nope.
1930s were called Nazis, basically a contraction of the term National Socialist.
But again, folks, North Korea calls itself a what is it, the Democratic Republic of North Korea or something like that? Not democratic, not a republic. The words, don't, and because socialism was so popular in Europe at the time, that was a great marketing move on the side of the Nazis. Could barely be called socialist at all.
For Gentile, all private action should be oriented to serve society. There's no distinction between the private interest and the public interest. Correctly understood, the two are identical. And who is the administrative arm of society? It's none other than the state. Consequently, to submit to society is to submit to the state, not just in economic matters,
Yeah,
but in all matters.
that is actually true. That is what a lot of fascists think, that the state is all that matters. The individual must submit to the greater whole. The individual doesn't matter. That I'll give him that. He is right about that. But not. That doesn't make you socialist. As a matter of fact, that is sort of right wing thinking, right? If you go far enough left, the idea here is, I mean, if you go to communism, the idea is that the state should dissolve and it shouldn't exist anymore, and the people should have more say. So it is simply not true. That is a right wing way of thinking.
Since everything is political, the state gets to tell everyone how to think and what to do.
Yeah.
It was another Italian, Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy from 1922 to 1943, who turned Gentile's words into action. In his Dottrina del Fascismo, one of the doctrinal statements of early fascism, Mussolini wrote, "All is in the state, and nothing human exists or has value outside the state." He was merely paraphrasing.
Again, folks, that is pure right wing. Okay, all is the state and nothing exists. There are no individuals. Okay, liberalism, as much as I may not be a fan of a lot of the things about liberalism, is about individuals, the freedom of individuals, liberty. That's where the word comes from. So the freedom of individuals. And yes, I don't know what he means by that. That is just not true.
Praising Gentile. The Italian philosopher is now lost in obscurity, but his philosophy could not be more relevant because it closely parallels that of the modern left. Gentile's work speaks
What does he know about the modern left? What does he? It doesn't parrot the modern left at all. The matter of fact, the modern left. You want to talk about the modern right? Trump, fascism, right wing. Okay, does that mean? So I guess Trump must be a socialist then.
directly to progressives who champion the centralized state. Here in America, the left has vastly expanded state control over the private sector, from healthcare to banking, from education to energy. This
So, especially for folks who are watching, who have seen my other streams here, we know that that's not true. The left and the Democratic Party have barely extended state control over industries and things like that. There's very, very few regulations. I mean, they've done it more than the right, but barely. Okay, nowhere near what would be called socialism in any other country. So, yeah.
state directed capitalism is precisely what German and Italian fascists implemented in the
Yeah, they did do state-directed capitalism. As a matter of fact, they did state-subsidized capitalism, where they would actually use the power of the state to support capitalist enterprises and things like that. Okay, not the same thing. Not the same thing at all.
1930s. Leftists can't acknowledge their man Gentile because that would undermine their attempt to bind conservatism to fascism.
Okay. Um, no. Okay. The reason why the left doesn't talk about Gentile is because he's not a leftist. I feel like that's pretty obvious. And conservatism is not the same thing as fascism, but conservatism can often lead to fascism. So I'm not sure. Yeah, again, more nonsense here.
Conservatism wants small government so that
Yeah, so this is not true. I think we can all say that, especially in the United States, conservatives want big government in areas that help them control people. Like, for example, controlling a woman's right to get an abortion, controlling the LGBTQ community, controlling what's taught in classrooms, controlling having a strong, powerful military that is controlled. But they want small government when it comes to capitalist enterprises. They want to deregulate everything, give more power to the people who already have power. It is simply not true because and socialists do not think that way at all. They want less power for these corporate entities and things like that. Um, I don't know why I'm even trying to dismantle him. It's clear he has no idea what the hell he's talking about.
individual liberty can flourish. The left, like Gentile,
Again, individual liberty for who? Individual liberty for corporate entities, individual liberty for the military, individual liberty for white people. Okay, you're not even then really. Okay, but not for most of the population.
wants the opposite, to place the resources of the individual and industry in the service of a centralized state. To acknowledge Gentile is to acknowledge that fascism bears a deep kinship to the ideology of today's left.
Nope.
So
Nope.
they will keep Gentile where they've got him, dead, buried, and forgotten.
Last note here, folks. The first concentration camp in Germany was Dachau, and the first people put into that concentration camp were not Jews, were not the Romani people, were not gay people. It were socialists. Same thing in Italy. The number one enemy of the Italian fascist regime were socialists, labor unions, things like that. So if it's true that fascism is left wing, what's that about? Okay, complete nonsense.
But we should remember, or the ghost of fascism will continue to haunt us. I'm Dinesh D'Souza for Prager University.
Well, that's partially true. The ghost of fascism does continue to haunt us in the form of Donald Trump in the right wing in the United States of America and Orban in Hungary, etc. But that is a right wing ghost. Okay. All right.